Welcome to In the Spotlight with Jeanne Ives. Today, my guest is State Representative Brad Halbrook. He is the 102nd Illinois State Representative, and he's from Shelbyville. And part of the reason we do these pieces called In the Spotlight is because we want to give you, the listeners, a different perspective that you may not hear up here in the suburbs. So Brad is the perfect vehicle for this discussion about how different the state of Illinois is from tip to top. And so we welcome Brad today. And Brad, while I'm just introing you a little bit more, I've got a few photos that I pulled off of your Facebook site. And of course, I've been down to your farm, but most people don't understand how much of an agricultural state the state of Illinois still is. And you can probably see now an aerial photo of your farm. And I think you also still do the organic farming, Brad?
Yeah, so we still do. The farm was certified organic in 2006. It's currently in wheat. And so it's been pretty good for us. It's kind of a niche thing and it works well.
That's terrific. I think you can also see a picture of me, and we're in front of a tractor at one of your fundraisers down there. You clear out your barn. You have this fantastic fundraiser every year right there on your family farm. It's just terrific. I mean, these are Illinois' roots, really, agriculture.
Well, agriculture is huge. I mean, 1 in 4 jobs in the state of Illinois is connected to agriculture. Decatur is named the soy city or the soy capital of the world because of soybean processing with what used to be A.E. Staley's, now Tate and Lyle. ADM has got, I believe, their world headquarters is there now. Just huge agricultural giants. They're not very far from home, 35 miles away.
Yes, and we're also an energy capital when you think about it too. I pulled off another Facebook post, and I thought this was just perfect because I honestly think the people in the suburbs have no clue about how much fossil fuel deposits we have in the state of Illinois. And you are standing outside a post that says the Illinois Oil Field Museum. Now, we have oil in the state of Illinois. I knew we had coal, but what about oil?
Yeah, lots of oil. There's oil in central Illinois. There's oil in southern Illinois. A lot of coal. In fact, my understanding is there is coal underneath every square foot of this state. Somewhere. This depends on the depth where it is. It may be very thick. It may be very thin. But there's coal throughout all of Illinois. And at one time, they had stated that southeastern Illinois was the Saudi Arabia of oil. It was the oil reserves were that vast in southeastern Illinois.
So given all of our natural advantages in the state of Illinois, I mean, energy is the master resource. We have said that before. You really can't do anything in the modern economy without energy. In fact, you can't keep your houses warm. You can't grow food anymore without for supplying fuel for your trucks and your tractors. I mean, given all that, I mean, you got CEO magazine that still ranks us in the third from the bottom in places to locate a business. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, energy's been important. For many years, people said, well, one of the biggest reasons, I don't know if it's number one of the biggest reasons industry would relocate or locate in Illinois was low cost of energy because we had these energy resources. And I think that's changed dramatically. Took months, I'll take a little diversion here, took months to get a fracking bill put together so that we could, and it took so long to get the fracking bill done that we missed that boom. But
we sure did. I was down in Springfield with you. You and I served together for 6 years.
The fracking deal would have re-energized not only just southern Illinois, but the entire state, just because of all the side jobs and the businesses that would pour into that.
And if I remember correctly, when we passed that fracking legislation, we had the most comprehensive and the most detailed protections for the environment. And the Sierra Club even signed onto that bill as a proponent of that legislation, saying that we have really strong environmental protections about it. But we took so long in doing it that basically gas prices dropped dramatically, oil prices dropped dramatically, and we were not cost effective for people to come in and actually frack. Now, as we go through this this new situation with the Biden administration not wanting to open up other oil fields, you see a creep up in oil prices. Is it possible that fracking could be cost effective in the state of Illinois.
I guess it could be, and I've not talked to anybody in the oil industry for some time to see what that with this price. I think they're probably going to kind of wait it out and see how long this lasts, if it's real, just where it's going to go.
Well, I imagine they're waiting it out though, because that's the opposite direction of where the Illinois Democrats want to take us on energy, right?
Right.
They've got Bill number 2 teed up to essentially bail out Exelon for their nuclear plants. When they had a $2 billion profit, at least a couple of years ago, they did.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest issue we face with the attack on these natural resources, the fossil fuel or the carbon-based fuels. We've got Marissa, the Prairie State Energy Complex down there, that was built under Obama air standards, and it's under attack by the environmentalists because it's the cleanest coal-fired plant in the nation. And it's under attack.
I've got another graphic here that I also pulled off your Facebook site, and it is a graphic of how we use our energy in the state of Illinois and where that comes from. I mean, nuclear is a big part of it. I'm not saying that we should have nuclear power. I'm all for that. I'm just saying the idea that you're going to be energy efficient using windmills and solar in the state of Illinois is just not realistic.
Right. Nuclear is a big deal. The Clinton power station is just an hour and 10 or 15 minutes from my home. It's tons of jobs, high-paying jobs. It's really important to the economy around. So the concern that I have about all the alternative energy sources is the folks that are promoting that don't have room for these facilities in their neighborhood. So what do? They send it downstate and put it in our farm fields. The richest farmland in most of the United States is in central Illinois, and that's where they want to put up these alternative energy facilities.
Yeah, Evanston and Northwestern University, they don't want windmills off the shore in Michigan. They don't want that in their backyard.
Yeah.
They're not putting solar panels up everywhere. They just aren't. It's not feasible. It's not doable, and yet they want to do it.
Right.
So they also do this whole locally grown food, right? Locally sourced food. Hey, I'm all for that.
Right.
Yet they're the ones who don't want us to be hunting deer and they don't grow their own food in their own backyard either, too. So, but I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but I think it's really important to note that Brad is an organic farmer. We have farmers involved in all aspects of farming in the state of Illinois.
Yeah. Yeah, we had grown produce from about 2008 up until just a few years ago. The market kind of changed on us. We weren't able to be really competitive in that situation. And so we just decided to focus on the row crops of corn, soy, and a wheat rotation. And so that's kind of where we're at. But it's a strange combination. I'm a conservative with an organic farm. It's just it's a strange mix.
I love it. And I think that you're opening people's eyes as they listen to this interview. One other thing I want you to open up their eyes to, and we're going to move on to specific bills and specific policies that are happening in the state of Illinois, because we've got about 3 weeks left of session.
Correct.
And you're going to go back down there tomorrow, and you're going to be starting to go do some more committee work on Senate bills. Mm-hmm. You'll go to the floor to pass other legislation, rightly or wrongly. But one bill that absolutely needs to be stopped, and it went through the House like butter through, like a hot knife through butter, and that is HB 2789. We've talked a lot about it from Breakthrough Ideas point of view. This is the bill that the Illinois Education Association put together and got Michelle Mussman to file legislation on their behalf that essentially hands over all of the opening of schools during a health crisis to the Illinois Department of Health. I mean,
right.
You're totally destroying local control. And how does a bill like this get 70 Democrat votes on it? It's terrible legislation. Doesn't matter what party you're part of.
Well, and that's an interesting discussion. That was on Friday before deadline day, the next day on Thursday, before the deadline on Friday. It happened in the wee hours of the night. I think we started about 11:30 that day, and about 11:30 that night, this bill comes up.
So in the dark of night, this bill passes, literally.
Right. And we'd not, at the beginning of the week, we always gather up and we caucus and we talk about these heater bills, right? It wasn't on the heater bill list. And so that was a question, is why wasn't this on the list? Why didn't we break and go to caucus and talk about it? Because it is a controversial bill. I mean, this goes into the home educating facilities, homes.
So homeschool families could potentially be affected by this shutdown bill.
That's my understanding. So, yeah, I think that this bill should have been slowed down. We've got a chance in the Senate to shut it down, so that's where people have got to engage and weigh in on it.
So what is the appetite? I mean, since this this story kind of broke 2 weeks ago about this bill, there has been some additional media attention on it.
Right.
Do you think that the senators are waking up? Do you think that there's people pushing back?
Well, I hope so. We see that from time to time. Hopefully they do the right thing on this one.
Definitely. It's a terrible legislation. If you go to breakthrough-ideas.com, if you go to our website, you can get all the talking points about it. And they're not just talking points. They're basically just bullet comments so you can follow along easily about what this legislation does or doesn't do. Okay, some other concerning things from my point of view that are going on. And this is, I mean, we said this about Governor Rauner during the governor's race in 2018. We're saying it now. What the hell's wrong with this governor? I mean, Let's start, first of all, with the whole veterans affair at the LaSalle County Veterans Home, where you've got 70 veterans that died, and probably some of them needlessly due to the governor's inaction during the COVID crisis.
Well, it's interesting. 15 months ago, we start to see what became of this governor began to emerge. When it was, we thought it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It seems like it's turned into 15 months welcome to 15 months of 15 months to flatten the curve. It's hit at 2 weeks. But the governor's just chose to go alone, Jeannie. He just chose to go along. We adjourned there or left on that Friday right there in the middle of March and didn't go back until the last of May that year. And he needed us up there. He has these emergency powers for 30 days. That's in the event that we're not there. He can gather us back up and we can begin to make these decisions about how to handle these situations. But issue after issue, the governor continues to go it alone.
Yes. So you're right. So 15 months later, he is going it alone. He's actually not inviting you in to pass legislation related to COVID at all, is my understanding.
Right.
Are you even getting to help? I mean, you're going through appropriations committees right now.
Right.
Are you getting to decide where the COVID money goes, or is it the Democrat staff essentially telling you what's going to happen?
Pretty much, yeah. The governor has a lot of control, a lot of discretion over these dollars, and so that's really concerning. But that's just the kind of the way it's going.
So the other piece of this, though, going back to the Veterans Home issue, is the fact that he basically threw his Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs director, Linda Chapalavia, under the bus.
Right. He
basically made her be the fall guy for all of that went wrong in that situation. And yet this is the same governor who grandstanded every single day in front of the TV, making himself to be really the COVID czar. I mean, nobody, the dictator in the state of Illinois on COVID, he wouldn't call you back. He wouldn't call Democrats back. He literally made himself out to be the COVID god. And now he throws Linda Chapalavia under the bus on this and then tries to distance himself from the issue.
Yeah, a couple things. These directors of these agencies, and we're going to talk about more agencies that are troubled, and all these directors of these agencies are there at his will. He has hired these people and brought them in, paying them extra money through the Jackson Avenue or Jackson Street Fund.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Which is just bizarre to me.
Yes, he's using his own money to pay higher salaries for some of his directors because he thinks they're so talented that they deserve it, and yet they can't run anything correctly.
Yeah, and so sidebar, we did ask an appropriations committee if that additional money is subject to additional state-funded pension benefits, and they're telling us it's not. So that's good news.
That's good.
But he is paying them additional dollars. But, it's just, I guess I had 2 points, but, the idea these directors are there at his will. Back to the veterans home situation is, he's on stage every day. Hey, we've got this. I've got the greatest doctors, the greatest medical experts, the greatest epidemiologists, and on and on and on.
Good point.
Okay, and we've asked him to show us that data. Where are you coming up with this stuff? And we're not getting any of that stuff. But trust us, right? And then we have this situation with the LaSalle Veterans Home.
Well, it's trust us with the school stuff too, right? That's the other thing. Trust us with the school stuff. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Right.
We're the only state that didn't have fall sports. We're still the state that is. Actually, I just looked at the ISB website this morning. I was looking up something else, and only 25% of the students in the state of Illinois are actually back full time.
Yeah, that's going to prove to be this is going to be a year and a half that is going to be a huge disservice to our students and our families in the state of Illinois, and I don't know how we recover from that. Hopefully, we're resilient and we do recover from that. But it's going to have some devastating long-term effects.
Well, one thing that we can't not talk about either is the Illinois Department of Employment Security. So IDS has been a failure from the get-go as well. Right. I mean, you had a lot of folks out of work to begin with, and then they couldn't get benefits.
Right.
And then you have people who now have gotten benefits, and now IDS is saying that they were fraudulently given those benefits, and you have to pay all the money back. I teed up a conversation based off somebody that works for my husband, who got a scary notice from IDS saying that he owes nearly $10,000 back, and that he was not rightly unemployed when he was rightly unemployed, and the company's supporting that unemployment. So, I mean, these people are worried. They get these scary notices from IDS. They can't talk to anybody.
Right.
I think I even have a clip. I don't know if we're going to play it. Maybe we'll play this. We'll play this short clip, and it's Governor Pritzker telling us when his employees are going to get back to work. Go ahead and take a listen.
So each agency has a plan for bringing its workers back. As you know, some agencies are right on the front lines talking directly to consumers, residents of our state, or directly to businesses, and other agencies don't interact with the public in person, but rather by the phone typically. And so each agency has a plan for bringing back their workforce. All of them are in the process of doing exactly that.
Okay, so Brad, what you heard on that clip was essentially that he's letting every single department deal with it themselves. He's letting them decide when and how their employees are going to get back to work. Now, I know that there has been not just Republicans, but Democrats basically going after the governor over IDES because they can't even get in-person appointments to really sort this all out. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so the head of IDS has been before our appropriations committees twice. We've asked for answers because of this situation that their employees are not in these offices. There's just a lot of situations out there that don't fit into the one-size-fits-all approach to getting benefits. People have been delayed getting benefits for whatever. And so we've asked for a direct line between our office and the agency to try to solve some of these real difficult issues. And we've been denied. We've sent a letter asking for that. The agency director on a committee hearing before God and the entire world says, I didn't get your letter. We asked for her direct contact information, asked her to send us to it. And she just stonewalled us. And the governor continues to let this happen. And we continue to get calls every day, every week from constituents all across the state, not just in my district, all across the state. In fact, I would argue the point that the Democrats are as mad or madder over the handling of some of these situations as we are. And so it's really disappointing that the governor's not even taking care of his own people.
No, it shows complete lack of competency on core functions of the government, which he's supposed to do. He's supposed to run these things. This is a crisis in leadership in the state of Illinois. And we're not even talking about tax rates yet. We're simply to talk about getting people the services that they deserve. And by the way, that all parties agree that they deserve.
Right.
This is not even controversial.
Yeah, last spring with some of the 1099 gig workers and that assistance, I think in the Midwestern states, we were probably the last state to go online with the process to apply for those benefits. And then it was one debacle after another to get that even done. And we're still picking up the pieces from that. Here we are a year later. And we're still picking up the pieces from that. So,
well, people need to remember, I know the comptrollers out there are bragging about how their payment cycle is down to just your normal 30-day payment cycle because they had this infusion of cash. But don't forget, this is the same governor that borrowed $3.4 billion from the federal government that is yet to be paid back. That needs to come out of Hyde.
Right.
They're expecting about $7.5 billion to come in straight for the state support. There's a total of $25 billion coming in from the federal government for all of the CARES Act or the COVID relief money from the federal government, which is totally a debacle. But I mean, this isn't going to solve our financial situations long term. We've talked a lot about the financial stuff. You're going to have difficult budget discussions coming up. But I want to move on to some of the other more critical areas where you see that there's problem. I mean, we had talked briefly before going online here about rent control, about the 2019 blue collar jobs provisions that Republicans basically cut a deal with Madigan on, and that seems to be getting reversed. So what other things do you think people up here in the suburbs need to understand because they don't see firsthand what's going on in Springfield.
So there's a huge discussion about affordable housing, right?
Yes.
And so when our caucus meets, I'm on the housing committee. And, what's the number one issue that's driving making housing unaffordable? We believe it's property taxes. When you look at homes in Illinois and you compare those to similar age and square footage in other states, Tennessee, wherever, the homes let me pause there. The real estate taxes are 20% or less for the same size home, same age in Tennessee as they are in Illinois. And they're selling for more money and the values go up. Our sale prices are going down just because it's real estate tax issue. We think that's the number one driving factor to making homes affordable for people. The other side says just the opposite. It's we've got to put a rent control on. We've got to rein in the property owners or the investors. We've got to subsidize these housing units more government, more taxpayer funded XYZ. And we're not dealing with the real core issue here, which is property taxes, which really stems back until we have some meaningful pension reform. We're never going to have property tax reform.
That is exactly right, because only through meaningful pension reform will you free up money in the state budget that you can push to education to relieve the property tax burden at the local level. So you've got this whole cycle of problems going on. Right. And obstruction all the time by the unions. The public sector unions want to have no discussion about any of this because they feed at the public trough, and that's how they get their money. Yeah,
the leading sponsor of this rent control legislation brought a bill before our committee just a week or so ago, and he said, well, I rather than mandate it from Springfield, we want to put it out to the voters to decide, right? We'll let the voters decide. We like that idea. Well, okay, we sort of like that idea too. We would like to have the opportunity to vote about collective bargaining, whether we want that in our communities, right? Because prevailing wage is another big issue that's really choking our local units of government and things down. But no, we don't get to have that discussion, but we're going to have this discussion about this.
Yes. And so at the same time that this Democrat is saying, oh, well, we want voters to decide why, because voters, even in Milton Township, voters put in a brand new property tax on themselves. So voters don't know all the time what they're doing when they're voting on a referendum. I'm just going to be honest with you. Right. I mean, there's this sort of like, what do? Are you there because you're more informed as a state representative? And so you can better understand the legislation, understand the impact, and then you need to message it correctly. So sometimes you take control away so as to make things, put it out better for people. Or are you there to just let them do whatever they want to at the local level? And good policy be damned if the voters want it, they want it. I mean, I think that there is a balance to be struck there. Right. But for so many times, the unions come in with their strong messaging. They come in with, millions of dollars to get their way on certain things. And then you just get higher and higher taxes. So there's got to be some level of protection for individuals, just like we protect individual rights in the Constitution. We need to protect individual voters by making sure that our policies at the state level reflect that intent. Because they can get bamboozled by local referenda. Now, so that same Democrat, back to this whole situation that wants rent control and also says, okay, well, we'll let voters decide at the local level if they want rent control. I bet you $1, though, that he's not, that he's the same person who wants voters to not decide on whether or not there should be unionization of private construction jobs.
Correct. I mean, he just takes the exact opposite
viewpoint. He takes the opposite viewpoint. So tell us about that. There's a bill down there that would do.
Yeah, so there was a bill 2 years ago that would force unionization of private construction jobs.
I remember that bill.
There was an ethanol plant that was trying to come to Illinois, and they chose not to. This bill was put on a 2-year hold, and guess what? 2 years is up, and they're running it again. That ethanol plant moved to Iowa. They had investors. And they moved to Iowa. I mean, to be built in corn country, central Illinois, and they moved it to Iowa. So we lost all that economic activity just over the threat of this bill coming back in 2 years. And it's back to the, his rent control bill. I just want to touch on this one important matter.
Yes.
So we'll let the voters decide. So can you imagine an investor, a property development person, says, I'm going to move into this community and build this facility for whatever apartments. But then he has or she has always this threat that community could pass this rent control issue. Well, what does that do for their investment?
if that passes.
It takes that investment. And in the city of Wheaton, and we're not the only city in this situation in the suburbs, we actually have a massive development right in the downtown area that was a part of a TIF district. So it would affect the voters on that, the taxpayers on that end too, because it's in a TIF district. It is, you have to have that level of rental support to pay back the TIF as well.
Right.
I mean, what are they thinking?
Well, it just seems like, I tell people we spend a lot of money in Springfield and we spend a lot of time fixing the problems we created from the previous year. And I think that's what we just fix after fix and we solve problems. Right. It's just. Oh,
no, but you're worried about, you're doing much more important legislation, like what the limit is 50 balloons can be released at one time.
Yeah, so the good news is we're going to save the environment. I don't So 50 balloons is your max release now.
Okay, max.
50 balloons max. 51, it's over.
If you're having that birthday party, mom just turned 50, you can only release 50 balloons.
Right.
When she turns 51, you better not do that.
Right. So good things are getting done in Springfield.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, well, you know what, though? Sometimes we do get good legislation passed, and I'm going to tee up a Brad Halbrook special. This is him being interviewed about his legislation a couple of years ago. And essentially, you passed legislation that required a township to give back about $735,000 back to the property, back to the taxpayers, because basically the township had just overtaxed them. So take a listen to this clip.
The Shelbyville Township voted back in May to rebate $735,000 of excess funds back to the property owners of the township as a result of my bill that passed a year and a half ago, the HB 1896, that caps these funds at 2.5 times the average annual spending of the previous 3 years. It was based on a 1969 Illinois Supreme Court case. I believe it was in Adams County. A business owner sued the county because they had funds on interest, and he says they're overtaxing me, and the courts ruled in that favor. 2.5 times is a pretty liberal amount of money. I mean, that's 2.5 years worth of cash, so that's a big number. So there'll be all kinds of stuff going on. Hopefully, the whole idea was to protect taxpayers. We have to maintain taxpayers in the back of our mind all the time. But hopefully the townships across the state of Illinois would do the right thing and take a look. And I think what's going to happen in our township is a year ago, before they voted to rebate the funds back, they reduced their levy in the town portion 33%. This year they held it even. And so I think as this thing balances out, we'll see a reduction of the overall tax burden to the property owners.
Okay, Brad. So tell us a little bit more about that bill.
Yeah, so the bill basically codified into law, I believe it was a 1969 Illinois Supreme Court case based in Adams County, and there was a business owner that says Adams County is overtaxing me. And they were accumulating, they had these massive amounts of these fund balances, and so that person actually won, and it took it all the way to Supreme Court. And so, but that fund cap kind of balance had never really been codified into law, so we took that ball and run with it. And actually, we put into existence that a township could only have up to 2.5 times of their average annual expenses of the last 3 years in a fund balance. And when you think about it, for a fund balance to have 2.5 times the amount of annual average expenses, that's a lot of cash.
It's a lot.
But my local township had 40-50 times
what
of their annual average expenses in some of these funds.
And they just kept taxing?
And we're a PTEL county, so they kept maxing out their levy, which is plus or minus 2% the last several years. And they just kept maxing that out, and it just kept building these funds up. I think they safely, in my home township, I think they safely could have returned anywhere from $1.2 to $1.4 million. They chose to send back $735,000 to approximately 2,200 property owners there about 3-4 years ago. And so I think it's had huge impacts across the state. I had some phone calls from individuals, different ones sitting on different township boards, and they were bumping up to that. So they were basically, rather than to get over that limit, rebate that money back, they were able to rein in their levy, right? That's what we want to do.
That's
we want to rein that
it.
levy in and get that down. The taxpayers, right? Jeanne, you talked about this a lot. Nobody's there protecting taxpayers. They are abused.
That's right. They don't have a lobbyist.
They don't have a lobbyist.
They really don't.
And people, if they realize...
I found that the most satisfying part of the job, though, is to take a constituent issue and basically write legislation about it and then get it passed because it just made sense. And to just really be that representative. That's what a representative is. You are listening to the people and you're figuring things out that they already know and that they need relief on. I mean, that's just terrific. But you did understand, though, that bill was only for townships, right?
Right. It's only for townships.
If you wanted to pass the same legislation for park districts or your community college or your city and village or your school district, that's a whole nother piece of legislation. And then you have another food fight. So people are willing to like take townships on, but they're not willing to take on school districts or any other.
Yeah. And to that point, we did get that bill out of the House. It's all local units of government.
It is all local units.
It's in the Senate.
It's in the Senate. So you did. Good.
We're kind of trying to strategize that out. But you talk about a food fight. It did create a food fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
All the associations that represent these different local units of government.
So, Brad, we basically, you had just about had it, I would say, a couple of years ago with the direction of the state of Illinois. So had a lot of other people. I think you can see a photograph we're going to put up right now. It's you and what do you call yourself? The Magnificent Seven. At some point, you called yourself the Eastern Bloc. And of course, the Democrats are like, oh, they're just like Soviet style Eastern Bloc. No. This is tongue in cheek, funny stuff, kind of standing up against the rest of the Democrat strongholds in this state, because a lot of you guys came from Eastern and Southern Illinois. Yeah. There's a couple outliers from the Northwest Territory. But I mean, you guys essentially had a conservative voting bloc there standing together, supporting each other. I think that's great. So you formed that, which is good. Mm-hmm. On the opposite side this year, is it true that the Democrats are really divided into 4 different caucuses at this point?
Yeah, they're early on. They, typically at early in the week, we break into a Republican caucus and a Democrat caucus for an hour plus. And first time back this spring, they broke into, I think, 4 caucuses.
So you've got what? You've got the Hispanic caucus.
Yep. I think there was an Asian caucus.
A black, the black caucus, right?
And I think the other one maybe was a moderate caucus.
Oh, a moderate caucus.
Yeah, everybody. Okay. If you didn't fit into one of those 3 categories, you were part of the moderate caucus.
You're part of other. General category called other. Allies, other, whatever. Okay, well, that's interesting. But I mean, so diverse state, right? And you threw up your hands a few years ago and you basically said, we need a new Illinois.
Right.
Tell us about that. You filed an actual resolution to create a 51st state, not the District of Columbia, by the way, but a new Illinois. Tell us about that process and how it's going.
Yeah, so it's going really slow, and it's patterned after the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. There is a pathway in the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 3, that new states can be created from another state. With the approval of the legislature, with the approval of Congress. And so New California started about 5-6 years ago, kind of laid out a process to get that done. New Illinois started on that process about 2 years ago. It's moving slow. What was interesting is there's kind of 2 groups in the state of Illinois. One group decided to put an advisory question on a ballot, county by county. And I think it's been on 24 ballots last March, a year ago, last November, and then there was one on the April ballot. The minimum that it is passed by, basically, it was just kind of gauging the temperature of citizens about separating from the northeastern corner of the state. And the minimum was about 60-some%, all the way up to the ballot this spring in East Central Illinois, over 80% approval with that idea. Everybody else was in the 70% approval rating to separate. So there's a high level of people that want to separate. And it's not, I just want to be clear, Jeannie, it's not any kind of a hatred towards the city. It's about the policies that are coming out of the city.
That's right. They have so much control and they see things so differently. And so many of them just, it's drive-by country for them, Southern and Central Illinois. They just they don't understand. Maybe they go down to U of I, maybe they go out to DeKalb, and in between getting to those, it's all corn and soybeans.
Well, a year ago in April, the Governor Pritzker and I had about a 20-minute conversation one evening, and he said, Brad, you've been really critical of me of not understanding outside the city. And I said, well, Governor, I don't think you understand outside the city. And he took issue with that. However, when you see the policies that are coming from the governor and the things that he says and the things that are coming out of the legislators out of the city, they don't really have a good feel for what's going on in central and southern Illinois or west central or northwestern Illinois. They don't have a feel for it.
And that's always my frustration too down in Springfield. We did so much legislation that only affected, for example, the city of Chicago or Cook County specific. And a lot of this, of course, was with crime bills, right? Mm-hmm. But in some cases, like the latest one that they did, I don't remember the name, but it was passed at 3 a.m. in the morning. The one that essentially
the defund the police bill.
The defund the police bill is what the colloquial name is about. Right. I mean, but that affected all of the state of Illinois. Right. When if they wanted to, do a trial and error in that in Cook County, go for it. But right. I mean, now they do want to wrap other legislature, other parts of the state in their crazy legislation.
Well, throughout all our state laws, Chicago and Cook County carves themselves in and out of anything they want to carve, for counties over 3 million, for counties under 3 million. They do this all the time. And so if they've got a gun control issue or a situation dealing with life or any other issue,
pensions, they have a different pension wrap than the rest of the downstate. They get 90% funded by 2056. Right. Everybody else is 90% funded by 2040. I mean, they get special deals all day long, twice on Sunday. I mean, the education budget. I mean, they get a huge portion. They get 25% of the education budget. Right. It's ridiculous. Right.
So, when the temperature warms up in central Illinois, drive-by shootings in central Illinois don't go up. It may go up in the city. Mm-hmm. We don't have this we're law-abiding citizens. We're responsible. A lot of these counties, it might take law enforcement 20, 30 minutes to get from one side or more from one side to the other. So you just have to protect your family. I mean, those are God-given rights to protect our family, protect ourselves, 100%. To protect our stuff. And, it's just a one-size-fits-all, going it alone. It's not really working for the rest of us.
Yes. Well, what's interesting about this is that you now sit in the seat that I vacated. I thought one of the best spots in the state legislature in the House chamber, because you could actually just stand up as kind of towards the back and you could just see everybody. It's a great visual. Right. And we used to call ourselves the no row because at one point Brad and I were in the same row. Right. When I was down there, and we were constantly just like, no. I mean, yeah, no, the no row thankfully continues to expand. Okay, good. And more so this year than ever. We've talked about a few pieces of legislation, but the legislation, and I don't want to distract from the discussion about this, the hollowed seat there, but it is a pleasure and a privilege to be there. Senator Rose, when I came there in 12, Senator Rose, Representative Rose sat in that chair before he went to the Senate. Yeah. And so Alan Skillicorn most recently, and we miss Alan. So I think he's doing well in Arizona. Sorry, I'm getting off at the track there a little bit. But yeah, in fact, I did lose my train of thought. There were other legislation that's like that you guys. So people have been standing up and saying no to craziness down there.
Right. And so, when you were there, 5, 6, 8, maybe 10 votes, maybe no votes. Right. Mm-hmm. But that no vote number has grown. And this year, the legislation is so bad that it does not take much to get 40, 45 no votes. Good. And it's not just one a week. It's 4, 5, 6, 8 a day some days, depending on the volume of legislation that we have. So this legislation is so bad. There was a piece of legislation the other day that would defelonize some drug possessions. And the motion or the measure failed. She was only able to get 59 votes. Oh, good. She came back within an hour and got 61 votes. People of her own party, some of them voted no, but some of them stayed completely off. They didn't even vote one way or the other. These are really bad pieces of legislation. And but we just see it. And I don't know if that's a change in leadership in the House that are allowing more and more of this bad stuff to happen. I'm really not sure what that's indicative of, but we're just seeing more bad legislation, more so than ever before.
Well, and then you've seen good legislation not get a single vote. Just, as we close out here, tell us about the trailer bill, which I think is alarming. Now, this is a bill for licensing trailers. It's the fee for licensing trailers. I'm going to bring in something here real quick. Actually, you tell a story about the trailer bill, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what was happening then.
Right. So any trailer, a kind of a cargo trailer, flatbed trailer, they're all you buy license plates by weight classifications. And so this was the minimum weight classification, anything 3,000 pounds or less. That plate.
So you would be carrying what? Maybe your motorcycle,
maybe a boat, a lawnmower,
whatever.
Just stuff like that. I mean,
stuff like that.
Right. It's it's a light duty trailer, one axle, maybe two. I mean, a lot of high school kids will have a trailer like this and they'll mow yards all summer long, right? This is their summer income. And so it's a really small trailer, and it was an $18 plate for a long time. And in the legislation 2 years ago, it put $100 on that plate. So an $18 plate became $118. And as I've walked and knocked doors and talked to citizens and gotten phone calls and emails about it, a lot of folks would have, I mean, these trailers maybe are $400, $500, $600. And
your annual trailer fee
is $118. Right. And so what was interesting, two numbers, when they did this, registrations for trailer, I mean, this increased fee went across the board to all trailers. Within a short period of time, trailer registrations were cut by 50%. And I'm not sure exactly.
Because you're registering in Indiana, if you can.
Well, there's or just not at all.
Or not at all.
Just not at all. And, I think the number was about 150,000 plus or minus. And I don't know if that was all trailers or just these TA plates. And so anyhow, Representative Avery Bourne from Morrisonville has a bill to roll that back from 118 down to 18, over 60 sponsors, Republicans and Democrats alike, and can't get it to the floor for a vote. And, they just...
Who put a brick on it?
Evidently, the Democrat leadership.
The Democrat leadership put a brick on that bill, rolling back trailer fees.
Right.
Yep. It's ridiculous. And so, and let's be clear here. That bill in 2019... the Rebuild Capital Program. Mm-hmm. Remember that bill? $45 billion backed up by 20 new tax and fee hikes, correct?
Right.
Remember what they hid in there? The Smart Buy program, $25 million to bail out people's student loans when they purchase a house and hold it for 3 years.
Right.
Terrible legislation. I've talked to you about this before from your, and we pretty much think that literally nobody really knew that was embedded in a $45 billion program. Right. Nobody told you guys about it. It wasn't in staff analysis. Nobody brought it up for discussion.
Right. Yeah. Staff didn't know. Our research team didn't know anything about it. This just pops up here recently. And you started writing about it, talking about it. We dug into it. And we confirmed that nobody knew this was coming. And so, yeah, $40,000 student loan payoff plus a $5,000 check that.
I know, just for closing costs.
For closing costs. Yeah. And so this is really a good deal. But it's a bad deal for taxpayers. It's a good deal.
Terrible deal for taxpayers.
It's a terrible deal.
But this was part of the deal that also Republican leadership to some degree, they put some votes on some stuff.
Well,
that now
I don't know that they knew about
back.
this deal, but the Blue Collar Jobs Act, which was some tax incentives for business and others. And so that was part of that package to put some Republican votes on that Capitol bill. And now this winter, the governor wants to walk those back.
Yep.
Go back on his agreement with Republicans that put votes on that Capitol bill, and he wants to walk that back.
So after the fact. So he asked for Republican votes to get what they calls his Blue Collar Jobs Act in 2019.
Right.
Republicans hand him 20 votes to get that legislation passed so it looks bipartisan, which is what Governor Pritzker wants it to look like. He worked with the other side. Right. And now the critical elements that the Republicans demanded for their votes, the governor now 2 years afterwards, thinking everybody will forget about this, is now trying to get rid of those incentives. I mean, it's such a dirty deal down there.
Yeah, well,
this is the type of stuff that makes your stomach turn.
Right. The budget's underwater from $1.5 billion to $5 billion, right? And the agencies are saying...
Are you pulling out your checkbook to balance that one?
Mr. Pritzker? Or
I don't know. Is Mr. Pritzker?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I think they want us to all of us to pull out our checkbooks. Yes, I think
they do. They want us all to write a check.
Right. And so, and that's a subject maybe you might want to touch on is the progressive tax. But it's just... it's just insane what's going on there.
Well, we're going to watch the insanity as it unfolds over the next 3 weeks. We appreciate you coming in. Again, for listeners here, it's really important that you understand the perspectives of all of the state of Illinois. We are not a homogenous state. We are one of the most heterogeneous states out there, so diverse. from our economy to our people to our culture. Honestly, that just could not be more diverse. But that doesn't mean that we can't be united in common goals. There are core things that should unite us as the state of Illinois. I like to say it again and again and again. Illinois should be killing it economically, but it's our bad policies that hold us back because we have so many natural advantages. So, Brad, last word to you before we close out.
Well, Jeannie, thanks for the opportunity to be here. It was a great drive up today. You know, I'm 3.5 hours away, and people say, well, where's that at? I said, well, it's in Central Illinois. From my home, there's still 3 hours yet of Southern Illinois driving. So I'm not at the extreme tip, but it's great to be here today. Hopefully, by getting this kind of message out, it'll hopefully change the hearts and minds of people across the state and in your region. There's a lot of work to be done. 2022 is going to be big. And so we've got to get this message out about reform and changing the culture in Springfield.
That's right. Common sense Midwestern values. That's right. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Brad, for being on my program.